sure how to navigate the mindset of their agents, right? We have a lot of team leaders that are listening, a lot of agents that are trying to figure out what steps to take in their business. So I thought we could open it up and talk about how to turn uncertainty, because that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with fear and uncertainty. When are things going to change, right? How do I impact what's happening in my own business to create change? So how do we turn that uncertainty and fear into action? Because as soon as you switch from being in fear to being in action, it's amazing how the world changes, right?
I think the coolest part, click on the little sandwich button, scroll down, you can see your members, all the events, but the mini master classes, that's what's going to set this apart, along with the master classes that are coming. But now you can click on the mini master class that you like. It's broken down into sections. You've got the process here. You can scroll down, watch the video if you want. They're not very long. They're about 5 minutes each. And you can go and click on the PDF, and there you have all the notes for that specific mini master class. To me,
So usually Tristan's on with us usually, but who's gonna be fake Tristan today? Because he's not on today. I think maybe Keri could be fake Tristan.
Okay. Well, I'll kind of guide us through the conversation. For those of you who have been following along with us, we like to talk about the thoughts that agents are having. And it looks like we are officially live.
Officially live. There we go. We were unofficial a minute ago.
Yes. So the three of us were chatting coming into this conversation. And one of the things we keep hearing from agents is they're not really sure how to navigate the mindset of their agents, right? We have a lot of team leaders that are listening, a lot of agents that are trying to figure out what steps to take in their business. So I thought we could open it up and talk about how to turn uncertainty, because that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with fear and uncertainty. When are things going to change, right? How do I impact what's happening in my own business to create change? So how do we turn that uncertainty and fear into action? Because as soon as you switch from being in fear to being in action, it's amazing how the world changes, right? So Saul, Mike, who wants to share their perspective first? And then I'll be happy to share mine as well.
I just want to give a quick minute background on sort of what is happening in the market too right now, some changes. Some things I caught were pretty interesting. I mean, we watched the market shift throughout the course of this year, but some new things I've been looking at, NAR just put a pretty cool stat out saying that as mid-year, like June 30th, mid-year, 92% of all the agents, I shouldn't say agents, but realtors, 1.6 million realtors, out of those 1.3, which is 92%, did 3 or less transactions in the first 6 months of the year. So I thought that was interesting because the median number of homes sold per agent in 2021 was 12. So there's a decline that's happening, from what NAR is tracking. On top of that, Fannie Mae just revised some of their predictions for 2023. I thought this was interesting too. They're predicting that we'll probably close right around 5.1 million homes, existing homes here in the US in 2022, but 2023, they're expecting it to go as low as 4.6 million, which would be right around the 2011, 2012 timeframe, what we had back then. So, the fear and uncertainty, I think people are reacting to they're seeing the changes. And I know not every real estate agent's tracking every number and stat, but they're feeling it in their business that something is changing. And what they were doing before that was working no longer is producing the same result. And they don't know what to do.
And NAR put out a figure year over year, right? So every month they put a year over year. Yep. And typically we're between 5.5 and 6 million transactions a year. That's like 11 to 12 million sides, if you want to look at it that way. And their latest year over year is 4.8.
Yep.
Right. And I'm not sure if agents reading that even know how to interpret that and what that means, and whether or not they see that as negative or positive. But I think you're right. What people see is it's almost like, and I think it's projection in a lot of the conversations I see. They see what they view as negative. They like an interest rate. Well, interest rates are going to go up. That's negative. Well, it might be negative, but there's always another side to this. There's always opportunity. There's always other things to look at. And so while we can present them with the facts, and I get accused of this, and I don't make the facts up, but when I present a number, people say, oh, you're just negative. No, I'm just trying to present you with a fact, because there are ways around this. I can tell you my best years in real estate were in the 80s when we were going through a recession, and I had clientele from different segments that provided me an opportunity that other people didn't necessarily have. So there are a lot of opportunities that other people don't have if you just look for them. But we don't view it that way, right? The big picture is kind of negative.
Well, you can either view it threat or opportunity. It's going to be usually one or the other, right? So, Keri, not to cut you off, you sound like you had a thought.
Well, I was just going to say, we had our Q3 meeting, right? And I started out because a lot of people, what they're feeling is a fact, right? So they're feeling like in 2021, I did X number of transactions, and now I'm only tracking to do Y, and so I'm failing, right? Well, hold on a minute. If there's the X percentage less sides and you're tracking it at this pace, you're actually a success in the market right now. You can't look at it in a linear pattern and then it's okay. So the exercise we did as a group, we said, okay, who has to move? Because when we start looking at it, there are some segments of the population that are going to move. So as we get more fixated on those populations, and we did a brainstorm, some of the things we thought about are people going through divorce, people that are pregnant, right? People that are just, they're out of room in their space, people that are getting engaged, people that are getting married, people that are relocating for work or relocating because they want to downsize, right? There's all these segments of the population that are moving. So what was working before might have been a more casual approach to interacting and engaging with all different populations. And all of them were saying, sure, yes, I want to do it. And now as a group, we have to look at, well, how do we get hyper focused on those segments, and how do we really appeal to them more specifically?
So, you know, what you remind me of is what they call the 15 Ds. And I've only got a handful off the top of my head, but death, divorce, diamonds, downsizing, diapers, diplomas, all the life events that trigger a move, right? And you're talking about being focused on, but I think what you're seeing and what we're really talking about is one of my favorite analogies. And I can never remember where I actually heard or saw this one, but I believe it's true. I think the market we just came out of kind of atrophied a lot of our skill sets because it got easy in a lot of ways. So it's almost like you're in a race car. Imagine going down the straightaway in a race car at 220 miles per hour, and you're feeling pretty dang good about it. I'm fast, I'm moving, I got all this power underneath me, but really it's the race car. What tends to happen now when the market shifts and we start banking the corner, now this is where the driver gets exposed, for better or for worse. This is going to say like, hey, this driver is going to have either the confidence, the mental fortitude, the physical stamina, the skill set, the know-how, how to maneuver and advance in those corners. Those that are not as well prepared fall behind. And I think that's what they're feeling, because that NAR stat I just talked about, that 92% of people, basically 8% of people or more, 8% or less of people are doing the business. It's not an 80-20 rule right now. It's more like a 95-5 rule. And with that's where the opportunity is. If you're actually putting the systems in place, and you're putting actually, I'm just going to call it what it is. If you're putting together the habits that lead to better outcomes, and you're doing the systems that work to actually produce business, you're not going to get less of it. You're going to get more of it, because people are more hyper aware of who they're choosing to represent them right now, because it's harder. And
so you make a great point. Even though the number is 4.8, let's say 5 million to make it even. There's going to be 5 million transactions. That's a lot of real estate transactions. And so, there were 5.56 million. There's still going to be 5. So we know that's a fact. There's going to be 5, what you were talking about, Keri, all these different things need to have. There are going to be 5 million real estate transactions. So lots still, particularly when only so many people make so much business each year. So there's going to be plenty out there if you do the things you need to do. And the other thing I think is really important is that people have lost sight of the fact that a real estate career is something that usually encompasses a number of turns through the business cycle. This is just how it works. When I was, and I don't list and sell anymore, but when I was listing and selling, I had friends whose fathers and mothers listed and sold before them. And they would say, like, they could tell how good the year was at Christmas time by the number of presents that were under the Christmas tree. Real estate people work really hard. Some years are better than other years. It's not always the way it's been over the last 10 years, which is an aberration based on big financial problems that we had in 2008. And we've kind of whirled through that. And so unfortunately for some, they haven't been in a situation where they've lived through this before. But for those people that have been around, it's, and then if you haven't been through it, talk to people who have. You can find your way through this. Again, there are going to be 5 million sales. How many are yours?
Well, look at what Keri just said too, and she's right, because when you bring up 2008, and what you had to do, and I was probably a year too late to do, was shift inside of the market where the business is going to go. There's still going to be that many transactions, but who's going to be doing the transactions? Who's actually moving? In 2008, I was avoiding investors. I was avoiding REO and short sale. I was avoiding all the things because I liked working with move-up buyers and, just your common every single day residential transactions. I didn't know the other side of it. And it took me about 6 months into it to have my income just being chopped into pieces before I thought, well, I better shift now, which took another 6 months to figure it out before I got really back in the game. So being adaptable and flexible and saying, where's the market going to go? In 2008, when everything started really changing towards the banco and short sales, investors, that was the market. Here, it might not be. Maybe it's a different market. Maybe first-time home buyers are really going to struggle. There's more of the affluent ones. Maybe it's some relocation. Maybe it's going to be something else that's going to drive a lot of your success. But I think Keri's right. You get hyper-focused in your local market. There is no national market. In your local market, who's actually moving and how do you target those people specifically? That's one of the places that you're going to find success.
So for me, I got into business actually in 2008. So I came from a new construction background. I got in 2008. And I remember I was telling my team this. I was growing faster than anyone else at that time, right? So I went from, in 2010, when I got really serious about building the business, I went from 21 transactions in 2010 to over 500 transactions just 5 years later, right? Mm-hmm. So what I feel was the key to my success is that I focused on segments that had to move. Mm-hmm. And I focused on both sides of the spectrum. So I knew I wanted new construction, and I felt like builders, which by the way, builders are someone who has to sell. They do not build homes to look at them. They build them to move them, and their cash is trapped. So they need talented salespeople to help them move, right? So move the inventory, not move out of the house. Obviously, they're building it to sell it. So I knew if I just tried to go after builders in my early 20s as someone who was brand new to the business, no one was going to say, oh, please help us, right? So instead, I went after the inventory that those builders needed. And I had a program that was very, very focused on the homeowners that had to sell assets that were distressed. So I went and I segmented by the land cost and the property cost. And some of you know, I have talked about this before, it's my teardown program. But what was interesting about that program is I got the sellers that had distressed properties. There was mold in the basement. There was a leak. They were in a position where they needed to move into a retirement home and they needed help because they didn't have a lot of time, right? And I targeted those people, and I was willing to sit in the living room with them and help them arrange their furniture. I was willing to do the hard work with the segment of the population that most agents weren't. And because of that, I was able to get the new construction listings because I had the carrot, entice the builders to work with me. And so I took over neighborhoods at the very bottom of the neighborhood and the highest price listings at the same time. And I got both sides because I was able to bring the builder to buy the asset that the family needed to sell, right? So let's shift our focus for a moment. That's one example of how I targeted those. I looked at
Keri, that's a real important point. And really, you're talking about targeting those different market niches. So and builder happens to be one, but there are others. And what you're doing is you're getting some human leverage here. You're going and trying to speak to people who speak to people. And that gives you extension beyond you.
You're absolutely right, but I want to say something about how I approached it. I approached it by using data that was available to every agent on the MLS. I had nothing special. I didn't buy a list. I literally took my MLS and I segmented, but in the MLS, you see that there's a value associated with the land and the structure. So just by studying the percentage of land to structure of the overall value, I could target the exact person who had a home that likely needed a lot of work, because it was just percentage, the percentage of value of the home was really low compared to the land, right? So why do I say that? Well, there's tons of data. If you're sitting home right now and you're trying to figure out what to shift in your marketing, the more hyper focused you can be and the more you can talk to a specific segment of the population that needs to move, the more successful you're going to be. Gone are the days where you can send a postcard that says, I just sold something in the neighborhood, and everyone calls you up and says, oh, great, please come sell my house, right?
Keri, that's exactly what I mean by that race car scenario. For the last couple of years, people are kind of going down. The car was driving you, but you felt like you were the one creating the action or the activity, right? Like, I sold a house, it took 4 minutes, I had 75 offers, sold 50 grand over asking price. That was really the market that sold. It wasn't your skill set. Right. And what I love about what we were talking about is, gone are the days that you can wait for business to fall in your lap easy. You have to have something beyond that to either offer or a way to segment the market and target specifically. And you need to do something or have a skill set maybe different than others, because we're all kind of perceived in the sea of sameness. We all sound alike, act alike, and there's no perceived difference unless we create that difference.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
So also, when we look at the real estate business, that's kind of the way I look at it, there's a lot of things you can do in real estate. Residential real estate sales is not all there is. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of ways that and as a matter of fact, when the market tends to dry up, this might be the time to look at doing some of those other things in real estate, acquiring different skills in real estate, working with people in apartment buildings or shopping centers. The time to look is when you're not inundated with business from your residential real estate business. I found it when I was doing it, and I got in the real estate business in 1975 and got a broker's license in 77, and we hit 79 and 80. And so we had to look for new things. Another thing we found was at that time, the world economy wasn't in a great shape. And so people from other countries were trying to buy real estate in the United States. And so money was flowing out, and that was just a niche. And we found ourselves in that niche where interest rates were going up to 18%, but we found these buyers who wanted to buy all cash. It was a counter to the whole. So these kinds of things happen. You don't necessarily expect them to happen, but you got to keep pushing ahead. It's not about doom and gloom. It's not about feeling bad that you didn't have the same number of sales that you had the previous year. You're in the real estate business, and you have to push forward every single year. And this is just kind of the test period. Most people will do fine.
There's another twist I want to put on that too, because segmenting the market, creating niches is huge, I think, because like we said, in 2008, it was short sale, REO, investor. That was a ton that was going on back there. Right now, there's some other pretty cool stuff that is not quite niche in that term, but it's almost like menu sales. It's almost like, you have solutions, because now there's so many great solutions to everyday problems, but not every agent has it or are aware of it. Like you're watching cash offers, from Open Door and companies like that. They're actually solving some people's problems. It's getting them able to move in with less friction with that program, right? You got power buyer programs out there, companies like Knock. You've got fix and flip companies out there like Curbio. We've kind of built some of the stuff in-house and leveraged, some other people's stuff. But what I've noticed is, if someone's meeting you for the first time at an open house or they called off a sign call, they want to take a look at your house, they called off whatever, lead generator you have, you go to meet them. They don't really care about you, the agent. In fact, they just want to look at the house. If you want to convert them to work with them in the future, finding out what their pain point is and having something that not every agent has in order to solve that problem. I've converted people on accident within a minute and a half of just meeting them. And they're like, yep, I need to work with you because you have something I can't find. So, really working with a great menu of specialized services and offerings is something we've built in, and we're seeing even brand new agents crushing it with that.
And you don't even have to put people into it, just knowing about it, just having the knowledge, because people are going to they're hearing about it. They're going to ask questions, and you can answer questions. So Mike, I think that's great that you've integrated this, because just being able to convey that knowledge is going to build trust and confidence, and it's going to lead to transactions in the future.
So I have an amazing story that's actually very applicable to this. One of my agents stopped me in the kitchen today in the office, and he goes, hey, I have to tell you something. I'm like, okay. He's like, I just got a deal under contract for $2.2 million from an open house lead from December. I'm like, congratulations. How did you do it? And he said, well, there's a new luxury vacation rental site called Posh Abodes. He just sent it to me, Posh Abodes. And they are able to leverage high income properties to create vacations for the uber wealthy, right? So they change out the decorations for the season. He's telling me all this stuff. They screen the people who are staying there very closely. They charge more, but they demand a much higher price for the people who rent. And so his client looked at the numbers on that once he found it, and she was looking for a home at $900,000, a $900,000 home. And then he said, well, here's an option to consider. And she raised her price point from 900 to 2.2 million overnight. Because he saw, hey, she has the income to do this, and she would just need to offset the income to get the kind of property she actually wants. So why don't we do that?
Or even, I love that scenario. And, we just did one too. I don't know if you've been following sort of the DSER loans, some of these really cool investor loans that don't qualify you on your personal income, but qualify you on the rental income of the proposed property, right? Changes the game for investors, especially people starting out. Now we've got specialized financing, specialized offerings, specialized programs from a menu, and you can concierge that menu to do a lot of the work for them and really quarterback it for them. And now you're not just coming with value, you're coming with an arsenal of tools that people just don't have. Right. And you separate yourself from everybody else.
New ways to own real estate, right? And the more you know about the new ways to own real estate, the Picasso is another one. I don't know if you've heard of Picasso. It's the same thing. It's the rental, taking a home, second home. Really, it's the second home market. And Spencer Raskoff and Austin Allison, Zillow people, created this Picasso. And it's the same idea. And at first you look at it and you say, no, right? But as you start to look at it and as times change and you know what? There is a market. It's the same thing. There's a market for that. And so do those people pay commissions? Because if they pay commissions, I might run into a situation where I have someone who's interested if I can get and so the more that you learn about these different ways that real estate's being offered to people, the more opportunity you're going to have for revenue yourself.
Absolutely.
I think it would be interesting to bring, because like some of the financing, I have 5 Airbnbs now, and some of the financing that we selected was non-recourse. It was actually pretty compelling rates considering it was non-recourse, and the percentage down was not terrible. It was 25%, right? So, and we were able to qualify based on future rental income, based on them doing a AirDNA analysis. Like, it was really simple. So I think it would be interesting for agents, especially those that live in markets that Airbnbs and VRBOs are popular, to learn more about that financing. Maybe that's something we could talk to Tristan about and bring a partner on, because I think most agents just don't understand that. But pivoting back for a moment, I think we're talking about like really niche specialty things that the agents can bring. One of the biggest things I'm focused on right now when we talk about turning uncertainty into action is how can the average agent manage their time so that they're spending time on different things? Because if
my favorite subject right there.
Yes. And I think it's so uplifting and empowering as an agent when you start really getting clear on, well, how do I spend my time to generate results? Because if you focus on one thing and one thing only, the chances are right now in the market, it's not going to work out, right? Because you're probably not going to go bang the phones for 8 hours a day. So if that's one of your pillars, mojo dialing or expired zone withdrawals, awesome. I love that. Okay, put that down as one pillar, but how do you build out? I tell my team, you have to have a minimum of 5 pillars. And then you have to take those 5 things that you decide you're going to focus on, and you have to put an action plan behind it and build weekly, monthly, and quarterly calendars.
I think that's the key though, because everybody wants to go wide, but not deep. The problem is they want to do 10% of the things you should do in each of those pillars, and they never get deep with it. So for me, and how do you implement 5 pillars? I would say, just want to add this as a caveat. It's probably good to get 1, add a lot of systems in it, move on to the next, add a lot of systems to it, or 2 at a time, whatever you can manage to do. But the reality is, don't just go wide and have 9 different pillars and do little to nothing within them and be overwhelmed. It's good to really get deep on the systems and the action plans in those, because that's when you're going to produce the most results.
Well, and when I'm saying pillars, like I think you're thinking marketing systems and I'm thinking something that's a little different. I'm thinking like, okay, if I'm a brand new agent or an agent that's not succeeding at the level that I want to, what are the decisions I can make today that will change my business? Number one, start doing open houses.
Mm-hmm.
Start doing open houses, put an unusual amount of signs up, wave at everybody in the neighborhood when you're putting the signs up. Does that sound stupid? Maybe. Have I gotten deals from putting up signs at my open houses and having balloons and having cookies at my open house? Yes, I have. So I think that there was all these people for the last year that said, I don't have to do open houses. I don't have to make phone calls. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. Okay. But that is the best way for you to generate business quickly, is to get face to face with people who want to buy or sell. Can we all?
Gary, what you just said just really reinforced what you and I were talking about. And I don't want people to miss this. When you talk about a pillar, I look at a pillar like each way you generate business. Open house is a pillar. Your SOI is a pillar. Your geofarm is a pillar. That's how I look at it. But what I'm saying is, don't just do 10% of it. Don't just show up with 4 signs do a 2-hour open, put very little advertising behind it, get 3 people in and say open houses don't work. What you just mentioned, you demonstrated, and I've done this, massive open houses. I've done 50 plus signs, balloons on the signs. I've done massive a week or more with the advertising, door knocking on it. I go deep in all the action plan on every pillar. Now, I don't want to abandon that pillar and go to the next one until I built this into a system. I don't want to reinvent the wheel every week. How do I do an open house again? No, I want to systematically do it so I can follow my checklist, do it the same way every time, and get predictable results from it. And you can do that in every single pillar.
You can. Absolutely.
Well, you threw it all together. It's all back to the very basic, which is contacts create contract.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just right. I mean, that's back to that. It's about waving to everybody. It's about smiling at everybody. It's about sitting open houses. That's all about contact.
But you know what Keri said though about the time management, and this is the biggest piece that anybody can really take away. How do you turn uncertainty into action? It's time management. It all starts with time and attention management. That's the 2 things. And what I mean by that is this: we all have the same amount of time. It's actually the greatest equalizer among all people. I don't care how rich you are or poor you are, how talented or non-talented, you all have the same 24 hours. Why is it somebody can invest their time so well and leverage that time so well that they have huge returns on it and the next person can't get it together? It's because of the way they manage their time and attention. Mm-hmm. So, and I will tell you, there's no mystery in this. The reality of it is this: it's not about goals. Goals really don't matter. What matters is your habits and your discipline. Mm-hmm. Discipline will trump motivation, and your habits will trump goals all day long. It has to be something that every day you consistently work at the same thing. You have a system, you follow it. If it needs improving, tweak it, improve it, and go. But people without a system, and they're waiting to feel motivated, and they don't have habits, and they're reinventing the wheel week after week and reacting to the problems of the day and never really having a schedule that they control, because your schedule, it's going to be this way. You control your schedule or somebody else will. It's that simple.
Yeah.
So most people don't take the time to take a time management course.
They don't.
The best things that I ever did, and I went to Annapolis. I was a military regiment. I thought I knew how to organize, and I understood. I was a naval officer for 6 years. And then in the 1980s, somebody said, you should take a time management course. I said, I don't need a time management course. And I took this time. It was like a 2.5 day. I said, how can you spend 2.5 days in time management? But it was the most valuable professional course I probably ever took. And I still use things that I learned in that course. And when people say time management to me, I have this big picture of what they mean. And it's because I took the trouble to take this course and listen to people who really understood time management, explain it. So that's major key to success, right?
It's the foundation, and time, and I even say attention management, because you can sit down. Let's say you're going to prospect. Keri brought up, FSBOs, withdrawals, expireds, a whole bit. You're going to prospect. Well, if you pick the phone up, make 3 calls, and get distracted because you're checking your email, and now you're checking your social media, and the phone rang, you're getting off track. You're never going to be able to really, really get the results you want or the outcomes you want when you constantly are pulled off and trying to get back. And psychologically, it takes us a minute to get in the groove. We never really get in it. We're constantly pulled out. So we have to manage our time and attention, avoid distractions. And there's, like, for me, if I'm really sitting down to do some serious work, my notifications are off, my email's off, my phone is not ringing, it's upside down. The only thing happening is an outbound call, no inbound. Like, I'm going to make sure that I'm really protecting that time and my attention in that time.
We used to call them the great interrupters, right? The telephone would say, do me now, do me now, do me now. And you have this tendency to want to go grab the thing, right?
Well,
That's the worst thing you can do.
And the tendency comes down, and it goes back again, the tendency comes from, hey, if I have somebody trying to call me, I need to respond or somebody else will. I don't want to be the agent that upsets my client. But the reality is, if the only value you think you have as an agent is to be the fastest responder, you're missing what your true value of being an agent is. You have to have more than that.
Yeah. Well, and one other, I know we're out of time here, but I'll just add one last thought on the scheduling and I teach my agents to schedule, like, yes, you need to time block, but focus on the result you'll generate during that time. Because if you're not obsessed with hitting the result, you will get distracted. So if you say, I'm going to go make calls for 2 hours and you're focused on hitting the 2 hours and giving yourself a cookie, that's not how you want to focus on it. What you want to focus your attention on is, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to get 2 appointments. And when you hit those 2 appointments, then you're free. You go focus on something else, and you should have a list of things of how you can spend your time to generate more results. One of the most underutilized, in my opinion, opportunities for agents is corporate accounts. Focus on the whales. Focus on the people who are going to drive 10 transactions for you in a year, 20 transactions for you in a year, instead of only focusing on the actions that will drive 1.
So I love that you said that too, because that's always my rule. You want to turn action or uncertainty into action, 2 appointments a day. That's your goal. That's your outcome you're looking for. Now, here's the thing. I've got 3 KPIs that I have to hit. The 2 appointments is 1, but I have to hit a certain number of dials. Call it, I need to dial 100 times minimum. I need to have this many conversations. And I'm going to say, I want to have probably no less than 20 conversations, and I want 2 appointments. Okay. Now my point is, if I only dial 25 people and I get my 2 appointments, I'm not done. I have to hit all 3. That's my personal rule. And I think everybody has to come up with their own personal rule, their own key performance indicators, their own KPIs that they hit, that they monitor and they measure. I'm telling you, if you don't track it and measure it, then you're never going to be accountable to it. And you're never going to really understand what drives your business in the first place. The more you track and measure, the more intentional you get, and the more you can control your business. And right now, when the market starts declining, having intentional control of your business that you can turn the dial up and down anytime you want to, that's going to build confidence that others don't have.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thank you so much. I know we're out of time. I hope you guys got a couple nuggets from that. We are all excited to bring our energy and experience to help you guys succeed. So thank you guys for being here. And we'll see you next time.
See y'all. Bye-bye.
Great to see you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.